Today we are looking briefly at the nervous system and how that relates to the endocrine system. So far, we have learned about the different parts of the neuron or nerve cells, and all of those cells linked together will make up our entire nervous system. Our nervous system is a giant communication system throughout our body, and without it, we wouldn't be able to do pretty much anything at all. So, our nervous system is broken down into various subdivisions, and here are what those subdivisions are regulated to do. So, first of all, our nervous system is broken down into two separate parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is pretty basic in that it includes only the brain and the spinal cord, which you can see here highlighted in green. The brain and the spinal cord are paramount to your existence as a human being, and without them, you really wouldn't be able to do much of anything at all, because while your heart is going to pump blood throughout your body and make you living, it's your brain that actually tells it to do so, and those messages need to get sent across throughout the rest of your body. So, my central nervous system, as my brain and my spinal cord, are heavily protected within the human body, and that your skull completely encapsulates your brain, and then your vertebrae are going to surround your spinal cord as well. Any kind of damage to your head or to your back could potentially result in major physical and psychological damage because you would be hurting your brain and your spinal cord. Now, your spinal cord is a lot like having your brain in your back, and that some of that quick decision making actually takes place right in your spinal cord. That the message doesn't even need to go up all the way to the brain. That if it's a quick thing like a reaction, particularly if you're in danger or you're scared, that a lot of those quick decisions can be made right in your spinal cord and don't need to go up to your brain for formal processing. So your brain and your spinal cord are what make up your central nervous system. But then our next division here is the peripheral nervous system. And when most people see that word, they think of peripheral vision, which is, of course, our vision to our sides. So our peripheral nervous system is actually everything to the sides of my brain and my spinal cord. So that's represented here in this diagram by all the purple. So everything that it was to the sides of the brain and the spinal cord, that's all going to be considered part of my peripheral nervous system. But now my peripheral nervous system is also broken down into two separate parts. That is my somatic nervous system and my autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is in control of all voluntary movements of your skeletal muscles. So like right now, as I'm talking to all of you, I am voluntarily saying all of these words, which means that if I wanted to, I could stop. And so there you go. Being in complete control of those skeletal muscles is the responsibility of the somatic nervous system. But now if we look over here to the autonomic nervous system, that word looks an awful lot like automatic, which is kind of true because these are going to be my involuntary movements, the things that I generally don't have conscious control over. I could if I really wanted to, but in many ways, these are what we call self-regulating. So things like blinking. I can consciously control my blinking if I want to, but as soon as I stop really thinking about it, my autonomic nervous system takes over and it blinks for me. Same thing with my breathing or even my heart beating. I can try to control my heart rate, but it's going to be impossible for me to consciously tell my heart to stop beating. And that's because it's outside of that conscious control, and that is controlled by this autonomic nervous system, which is, of course, part of my peripheral nervous system. But then the autonomic nervous system is also broken down into two parts, and that is my sympathetic nervous system and my parasympathetic nervous system. Let's say that you are walking home from school one day, and as you're walking home from school one day, a bear suddenly jumps out behind a bunch of garbage cans and it looks like it's going to attack you. Your immediate response that you have in your body is typically one of fight or flight. And what controls that, of course, is going to be that sympathetic nervous system, that arousing. And what it's going to do is sending signals to your body that this is something that's important, I need to pay attention to it, and I need to be able to react. And so that is the job of the sympathetic nervous system. If I go on to my next slide, we'll look a little closer at the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic. So that bear has jumped out from behind the garbage cans and you're afraid that it's going to eat you. So what are some things that the sympathetic nervous system is going to do to help you with that fight the bear or flight from the bear? Well, first of all, your heart rate is going to increase. Your heart starts beating really fast. It's going to pump blood faster throughout the rest of your body, which in turn is going to make you breathe a little bit heavier too. This, of course, is going to make you start sweating. That anytime you're nervous for a test or you're going to talk to somebody that you really like, you might find yourself getting really hot under the collar or even in your armpits. And that's the sweating that's being produced from that accelerated heart rate. You might also find your face getting really flushed. And that again is because of that increase in blood flow that we start feeling that flushed surge that's going to raise up in our cheekbones. The other thing that's going to happen is that my pupils are going to dilate. And this again is going to be one of those kind of automatic survival functions, and that when your pupils dilate, it's trying to get you to see better. So particularly if you're in danger, like that bear is coming at you, your pupils have dilated because your body wants you to be able to take in as much information as possible. Now, those of you who maybe play sports or you do some kind of performance activity, you might know that it's not a great idea for you to eat a big meal right before a game. And why is that? Because you often find yourselves feeling like you're going to throw up, or you indeed do throw up. Well, why is that? When your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, it's going to inhibit digestion, meaning that any food that's left here in your stomach, it's not going to go through the proper digestive channels. So it just sits in your gut, and that's what makes you feel nauseous and makes you feel like you're going to throw up. Likewise, some people are going to have some loose bowels when it comes to the sympathetic nervous system, and that their nerves themselves, when you say that you're really nervous, that it can make you have to go to the bathroom quite often. Likewise, it's also going to relax your bladder. So if you're really nervous or even really excited about something, because it's that sympathetic nervous system, it's going to relax your bladder and you're going to have to feel like you have to pee and pee a lot. So a lot of people, when that sympathetic nervous system kicks in, they might find themselves running to the bathroom. Now, when I mentioned that bear coming at you from behind the garbage cans, a lot of people would probably think of adrenaline and that their body's going to start producing adrenaline. While yes, that's true, it is actually, however, the sympathetic nervous system that's going to stimulate the adrenal glands to start producing the hormone adrenaline. So it's the sympathetic nervous system that acts first, and then it's the adrenaline that's going to kick in. And I'm going to explain this a little bit further in just a minute. Okay, so you ran away from the bear. You decided not to attack it. You're trying to catch your breath. Your heart rate is going to start to relax. After a little while, everything starts to calm down. You start feeling better. That's going to be the job of the parasympathetic nervous system. That parasympathetic nervous system is going to kick in once the danger is over, and it's going to help you calm back down. And it's put all of these things back into homeostasis. So your pupils will contract, your heartbeat's going to slow down, your digestion's going to start back over again, your bladder's going to contract, so you're not going to the bathroom all the time, that you are, again, returning to that balanced state, that point of homeostasis. So the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for arousing the body when it needs to, but then that parasympathetic nervous system will kick in and will help calm you back down when you need to. So these then are the divisions of the nervous system. I have my nervous system broken down into the central and the peripheral nervous system broken down into the somatic and the autonomic nervous system broken down into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Now, the nervous system isn't the only type of messaging system in your body. There's one other type that we need to compare it to, and that is the endocrine system. Now, a lot of times when people talk about hormone production, they're often referring to things like when kids are growing up and they're hitting puberty and the release of hormones, or they're talking about when hormones take over between couples, but that's not really all that hormones are responsible for. So first of all, your endocrine system is a messaging system that utilizes hormone messages, which are chemical messengers that chemically resemble neurotransmitters in many ways. But whereas neurotransmitters are produced by neurons and then passed between neurons, hormones are going to be produced in my glands. So I have various glands throughout my body, and there's a list here in this image of some of the major glands of my body. And so these glands are responsible for the production of hormones. And these hormones will get produced in the glands, but then they're going to move throughout the body via the bloodstream. And so because they're moving through the bloodstream as opposed to the nervous system, it's going to take a lot longer for your body to actually start the production of hormones and for hormones to reach the various areas of the body that they're supposed to be activating. But hormones will give me much stronger feelings than neurotransmitters, and those feelings themselves are also going to last a whole lot longer. So like, for example, we have the bear that jumped out from behind the garbage cans on our way home from school. You decide that you're going to run away from the bear. So as you're running away from the bear, let's say you trip and fall and you actually break your ankle. But you get up and you keep running and you don't feel any pain or anything. Well, why might that be? So your sympathetic nervous system, when it kicked in, it also began to activate your endocrine system, telling your endocrine system to start pumping up the hormone production. So when you were running away from the bear and that you were able to not feel the pain of your broken ankle, and you were able to run faster and farther than you ever thought possible. The reason for that is actually because of the hormones that you started producing. Because hormones give us these stronger feelings and they also last longer, they're often what is responsible for some of these kinds of superhuman strengths that people have when they're in a emergency situation. So you might have heard of like mothers who are able to pick up cars to save their children. That's actually very true, that can happen because of that hormone production. So I like to compare hormone production and neurotransmitter production to the difference between getting a birthday text message versus getting a birthday card in the mail. They both have the same message. They're both saying happy birthday, but your happy birthday text message from your friend, it was fast, it was quick, it was easy, but it was kind of short-lived. So much like the neurons and the neurotransmitters. Whereas a birthday card in the mail, well, it could be from grandma. And grandma likes to send $20, which is great. It took you a lot longer to get that birthday card in the mail, but the birthday greeting that you got gave you a longer feeling, and it was a stronger feeling as well. So that's a lot like the hormones. The messages can be identical to one another. Happy birthday. But how you receive them, the speed and the effects can be different from one another. Where hormones, which are produced in my glands and travel through my blood, are going to move slower but give me much longer effects than neurotransmitters. And so here we have the differences between my nervous system and my endocrine system and how they relate to the communication that moves throughout my body.